we go. Okay, I think we should be live. I'm just going to wait for people to join. We've joined a little bit early, just to kind of make sure all the technical bits are smoothed out and get everyone settled. And I'm just going to post a link to where we are. Great. Helen says we can see us all, so that's the main thing. If you can see and hear me, you're in the right place. Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to share a link to where we are in a couple of other places, just so people know that we're here, and we'll start in a couple of seconds. Fantastic. Okay, that didn't work. You never know with these things. Actually, I can't see myself on Workplace, so it's quite a strange experience, actually. I think before I used to be able to see myself. I'm just gonna okay, great. I am going to start us off we'll get started in just a minute. If you have questions or anything you want to sort of, feel free to say hi in the comments. That's how you can kind of interact with us throughout the next half an hour or so. Great, I think we're at 12:30, so let's get going. So welcome all. Welcome to Workplace Live. This is always a bit of an exciting event. Thanks for joining us. This is the live Q&A on the Assets and Legal Bodies Support Offer. I'm Alice. I'm from Local Trust. I'm a partnerships coordinator at Local Trust. I manage the support offer. I am joined by Stephen from Locality and Mark and Louis from Shared Assets, who you'll see and kind of hear from imminently. They are our partners on the Assets and Legal Body Support Offer for big local areas, and they're going to kind of discuss that a bit, present that a bit. You can hear a bit more what it's about, and there'll also be an opportunity to ask questions. So please, kind of throughout the next half an hour, please, there should be a section at the bottom to post comments. I don't see any yet, so I'm hoping that no one's put anything in and I haven't seen it, but please feel free to comment and ask questions in the chat box below, and there'll be time halfway through for us to address those and answer any questions, and we can also follow up and pick up on anything else later that we might need to follow up on or discuss individually. But hopefully this is a really useful overview of this support offer. Was there anything else I wanted to add about that? Yes. So yeah, I think that's it in terms of what I wanted to cover. I'm going to hand over to Stephen just to introduce.
Thanks very much for that, Alice. Hello all. Nice to be here, and I'm going to run through a bit of the overview of Locality's involvement in this. I'm just going to share my screen. There's a couple of slides. Which I'm hoping you can see at this point. So we're Locality. Just a bit of background in case you don't know. So we're a national charity, national membership organisation, supporting local community organisations to be strong and successful. There's about 1,500 Locality members currently around the country, all supporting people in their local area. And yeah, we're proud to have a number of big local partnerships involved in our membership as well. Hope to see more joining soon. In terms of our specific role and some of the things that we'll be able to offer big local areas and their related partnerships, it breaks down into three things. The first thing is about the in-area support. That's up to 10 days of direct bespoke assistance tailored to your particular organisational needs around legal, organisational setup and asset related things. We can help at kind of all stages of organisational or project development. So this is applicable whether you're just starting out and thinking about getting your organisation into a more formal state, or your asset is at a very early stage and maybe your particular project hasn't even been kind of honed down yet, right up to the other end of the spectrum where something is much more advanced and perhaps you need something pretty targeted and tailored and technical. So the whole kind of spectrum is available to you. In terms of the legal and organisational support side of things, we can help with options around legal structures, around the different legal structures, pros and cons, governing documents that might need to be prepared to fit your particular needs, help with registration to some of the bodies that you'll need to interact with to go on that process, things like charitable status, roles and responsibilities of new board members and trustees and things like that are all part of the potential package. And on the asset side of things, pretty much anything that is potentially of interest in terms of land and building community assets. So the whole spectrum in terms of the steps, the typical steps in the process, including different routes to acquiring community assets, community asset transfer, or assets of community value, right to bid, or just outright purchase in a more commercial sense from a private owner. All the key considerations around that, how to negotiate and get a good deal, and the legal considerations are all part of the offer. Business planning, the kind of financials and the feasibility are integral to making a community asset work, and that's part of the in-area support, and plenty of kind of opportunities to link you up as well to other resources and activities and places to get more help and support from other professionals and other people from within the sector are all part of the offer. In addition to the in-area support, there are also some learning events coming up which big local partnerships can take advantage of. The first one in a series is coming up soon around setting up legal bodies training. That's 23rd of June. That's aimed more at organisations that are just starting out on this process and want to make some of those incorporation choices and need to know what to look out for and the kind of key considerations around that. Following it up in July on the 12th by looking at the first of the assets program, and that would be investigating feasibility and early stages of an asset project. And then later in the year, we're going to both these aspects in a bit more detail, look at some of the more advanced stages in the process and more of the sticky issues. And then finally, we just wanted to say something about networking and keeping in touch as more of a peer group, because it's also part of what we'll be coordinating and facilitating. We're keen to hear from you. We're keen for you to share your experiences with other areas and to enable those fantastic stories and ideas to be picked up by others. We'll also be producing some resources along the way. We have one lined up very soon in response to the new Community Ownership Fund, which I know some of you are looking at carefully. So we'll be producing a briefing around that. But we're available all the time through the Workplace app in terms of answering questions and dipping into any of the conversations. We'd love to hear more about what you're doing, and we'll also be able to put real human faces to some of this because we'll be coming along to the big local Connects event in September. So people that are going along to that are really looking forward to the opportunity of meeting people in the flesh as well. So that's very briefly me from Locality. I'm going to just come out of this now and hand over, I believe, to Mark.
Thanks, Stephen. Hopefully my video is on, you can now see me. So I'm Mark from Shared Assets, and we're partners with Locality in provision of support around incorporation and assets. We generally support communities that are taking on ownership and management of land and buildings, and we have a particular focus at Shared Assets on land-based enterprises and projects, so people that are managing things like farms and community gardens, woodlands and parks, and that can include all kinds of things like skate parks and BMX tracks and things being developed within parks. But we also do a lot of work with communities that are taking on ownership of buildings, and I think particularly have quite a lot of experience of supporting communities where there's kind of really complex relationships and partnerships to develop and manage, as is quite often the case with things like open spaces, where there's lots of different user groups and all of that all of those different interests need to be managed. We, similar to Locality, we specialise in supporting groups to develop things like business plans and feasibility studies, developing kind of governance arrangements and choosing the right legal structure to take on the ownership or management of an asset, and support groups to work together, both as a group and with other stakeholders that they might need to be working with, like the local authority or a landowner or another community organisation. We're not technical specialists like planners or surveyors or solicitors, but we can help you to understand where they can help you best, and help you to kind of brief them well and get the most from working with them as well. So some examples of, we've been working with Local Trust over a number of years now, prior to this particular programme of support. But within this programme, we're currently supporting Villages Together in Somerset, who've got 3 different working groups who are developing kind of feasibility studies around specific building projects, and we're helping the partnership to decide how best to invest in them and to move them forward. So they include a sports pavilion, a village hall with some land attached to it, and a sports centre. We're also working with Birchfield in Birmingham, who are taking on a church building, helping them to develop a business plan and something that's kind of phased to enable them to initially lease some space in the building, and then potentially take on the lease for the whole of the site, and then finally to potentially develop a building in the grounds. And I've just seen actually on Workspace, Stephen mentioned the Community Ownership Fund, and somebody's posted on Workspace about that with a picture of what looks like Ramsey Pavilion to me. And we supported Ramsey Millions to develop a business plan for that, and also to develop a joint venture with the local cricket club, because it's the development of the building is being done jointly by the cricket club and local community organisation. So all kinds of interesting legal complications around leases and the setting up of a new joint venture to manage that building as well. So kind of very practical support, being a sort of a friend to help steer you through the complexities, find the right technical support when you need it, and also to do some of that work around business planning and legal structures and governance. So I think that's it from me. Pass you back to Alice.
Great, thank you so much both. Brilliant, really brilliant to hear from both of you about what the support kind of looks like, and also your experiences already working in different big local areas. So this is the part, I think, and people have managed to join, which is very successful. So we're good. I think it took people a little bit longer to join than we'd anticipated in terms of finding where we are live. But I think you can actually rewind this live. So if you did miss an earlier bit, you can kind of go back to the beginning if you'd like to, if you missed something. And it should save on Workplace as well, hopefully. So fingers crossed that all goes well. So I'm just going to have a look at some questions. Lorraine asks, will the learning events be recorded? Yes, I think we will be able to record parts of them, perhaps not in terms of the discussion elements with people in the room, but some of the presentations, and certainly the slides and things like that, and any resources, notes and things like that will be able to be shared. And I'll probably look to post them in this group, Focus on the Future, as that's kind of the main Workplace group for this assets and legal body support. So I'll look to kind of keep sharing those in due course over time, and you can kind of refer back to them hopefully, and that's a useful resource for your plans and activities and what you might be up to. Danny asks, how do you book 10-day support? So you can get in touch with us. I will pop the contact details in the chat. I think Mike might have done that already, but if not, I'll put them in again. support@localtrust.org.uk is our main contact email address. There's also a phone number as well. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but maybe Mike can post it. And that's a good way to kind of be able to speak to us, chat us through kind of what your big local area is up to, what kind of support you might need, and then we can put you in touch with Stephen or Mark and get that kind of going. Actually, a good question I have for Stephen and Mark is, and I think a question that kind of has come up quite a bit from a few different areas, is what is the best time to access support from either of you? Is there an opportune time in kind of along the journey of either acquiring an asset or becoming a legal body that's a good time to engage in that process? So I'm wondering if one of you wants to kind of pick that up and answer.
Should I jump in with a thought? I think it's a good question. It's a hard one to answer directly in terms of, in a black and white way, but I suppose firstly when the time feels right, naturally it feels right for you. If you have a genuine kind of desire to make something happen and you feel there's enough kind of momentum around your project, then I wouldn't put off anybody from making an inquiry. But just on the asset side of things, it certainly does help that a specific asset is in mind and has been identified. I think at that point in the journey, then there's the potential to have a really meaningful conversation. So I think that's one kind of criteria. The other thing would be a broad base of community support, which you've generated up to that point. If that exists, there's been an engagement program already, and you have a decent idea of needs and wants and potential supporters within the community itself, then I think, again, that's another good piece of evidence that probably indicates that it's time to get in touch. And I suppose maybe the third thing will be some other external, imperative or perhaps deadline in terms of a funding opportunity or a particular decision that needs to be made by a particular point, or a kind of something that's happening in a local authority process or another funder's kind of existing process. If there's a sense of urgency in that sense, then maybe if all three of those things come together, it's time to get in touch.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I think those are all right, and I think particularly the point about having a specific asset in mind, and I think it can be quite difficult if you're still at the point like, we're thinking about something, but I would also say I think there's something really important about getting the purpose right. So kind of why is it that you are wanting to take on this building? What is it, or land? What is it that you're going to want to do? What does it help you to deliver in terms of your kind of big local objectives or legacy? And sometimes you might know that and have that purpose really clear, but sometimes it can be really useful to get help at that stage, I think, of kind of really nailing down why you're doing this. Taking on assets is quite a big, a big task. And so I think being really clear can then help a lot in steering further work and the kind of the direction of that collective work as well. So I would say if you're clear on that, then great. But if you're not, then that's also a good point to kind of to get help to think about what you could be doing with this.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to go back and have another little look here. We've got a few more questions coming in. Which they definitely could do with 10-day support for our new project from Marion. Great, Marion. Please reach out to me at the support email address. I'm happy to have a chat about that and hear a bit more. Thank you, Mike, for answering some questions. Helen, what topics will be covered as learning events, and are they suitable for big local areas that are just thinking about taking on an asset or becoming a legal body? So what kind of topics, what can people expect to hear in those? Stephen, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, they're absolutely right for organisations that are just thinking about getting underway in this process. As I was saying earlier, the first one's going to concentrate on the legal bodies side of things. So if choices haven't been made around what type of formal organisation to set up, then that first session is going to be kind of perfect for you. It's going to talk about the pros and cons and benefits of making incorporation decisions, the kinds of things that you'd need to put in place in terms of the governing documents that are appropriate for the particular organisation that you're going forward with, how the governance of the organisation needs to be set up and reflected afterwards, and how the people involved in making decisions and being responsible for guiding the organisation, what their particular roles and responsibilities are. Things like charitable status and the pros and cons about that, the sort of limits of it, as well as the benefits, will also be discussed. So that area around legal bodies would be useful for anybody who's at that stage of their development. And in terms of the asset side of things, we'll be going through a typical process, the benefits of doing it, some of the key considerations around how to structure and negotiate the legal agreements, what a good deal looks like in practice, so you can avoid the risk of potentially taking on a liability rather than a true asset, and where some of the other help and assistance can be drawn in from in terms of professional advice, and the whole kind of numbers and financial side of things, from how to go about thinking about whether it's actually kind of feasible and it's going to stack up in an economic sense, the sorts of ongoing costs that may be involved that need to be thought about at the outset, whether the income streams really stack up, and what the the potential market is for any of the plans that you particularly have in a financial sense, and how to pull that together into a business plan, and where other funding and other financial assistance may come from as well. What are the sorts of things which will kind of help that to happen, to make sure it really flies. So a lot to cover, but the first session will be more aimed at those which are kind of at that early stage of development and need to kind of tackle all those things. And then the later sessions will go into some more detail for more advanced stage projects.
Great, thank you. Just having a little look. Mark Jory asks, do you provide detailed business planning advice, including generating revenue and making a sustainable model? I would assume the answer is yes to this. But Stephen and Mark, do you want to add anything else to that around providing business planning advice, generating revenue, making a sustainable model?
I think that's sort of bread and butter both locality and shared assets can do, in terms of providing that level of support, both in terms of helping you think through the kind of main elements of your business model, like where the costs and income are likely to be, but also making sure that that's kind of thorough, that you covered all the bases, kind of thought about all of the different types of costs that might be involved in managing a piece of land or an asset, including thinking about the long term, and kind of as Stephen said, kind of making sure that it is an asset, that it's something that's going to generate income for you and not just be a series of costs that you're forever trying to cover. And then, yeah, looking at the types of activities that can be undertaken within those assets to generate long-term sustainable income. And certainly at Shared Assets and Locality, kind of very focused on supporting people to develop livelihoods, so that they're not entirely sort of voluntary voluntary kind of projects, but there is income there to support livelihoods and make sustainable organisations for the long term.
Great, thank you. And then there's a comment from Chris about considering local support available from infrastructure bodies such as the local CVS. So yes, I think we would support and agree that it's important also to look at local options. And I think there's definitely, I think partnerships and kind of like good kind of useful collaborative working relationships can be found between both kind of Shared Assets or Locality as a national support provider and also perhaps some like local organisations as well. And I think both our teams here are like very collaborative and keen to work with others throughout kind of any support process. That's it on the questions that I can see. So just wanted to give a shout that we've got about 5 minutes left in case anyone's sort of thinking about something and wants to stick it in now, and that because we are finishing this at 1 o'clock. So if you've got a question, please put it in as soon as you can. If people are just thinking about a final question, I've got another one that I'll ask just briefly, and this is kind of a good, again, kind of maybe a standard, quite a broad question, but anything you want to say in terms of common pitfalls that people should be aware of when they're thinking about embarking on the process of setting up a legal body or acquiring an asset. Any common pitfalls that you want to kind of highlight or flag just briefly?
Gosh, there's so many which we want to take up all the time now, but just one on the, well, we're in a kind of business planning theme, that it's taken on an asset can also be quite an emotional rush for all sorts of good reasons, and in that emotional rush there can sometimes be a tendency to be a bit over optimistic about the potential quality of income streams and underestimate some of the potential ongoing costs. It's a kind of pretty natural condition, I think, for most community organisations. But you know, one we'd always, you know, try and help an organisation really think through in an objective way and test and refine. So yeah, that's one potential one to look at and think about.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Also, I think coming back to kind of purpose and particularly thinking about legal structures, but it applies to assets as well. I think, you know, quite often people, when they think about legal structures, tend to jump to like, oh, we need to be a whatever it might be, legal structure of choice, charity, CIO, because we've heard of that or we know of one locally or whatever it might be. And I think it's really important. You know, we always come back to the idea that form follows function. So decide what it is that you want to be doing and then choose the right legal structure for that, so that you don't then have to go and change it later if you can. So I think that, yeah, do thinking about purpose is useful both for buildings and for legal forms.
Brilliant, thank you. Lots to think about there. And Marion says they've already experienced some of these pitfalls. So yeah, it feels familiar. It feels familiar. I can't see any other questions. I'm just double checking. So I think we can probably draw things to a close. Yes, just checking again, making sure I haven't missed anybody, but yeah, I don't think so. Thank you for joining. It's been great. I think we had 20 people overall, so really pleased that people been able to kind of watch, and hopefully you've understood a bit more about what our Assets and Legal Body Support offer is all about and some of the opportunities around that. As I said before, if you would like to get in touch and, you know, potentially receive bespoke support for your big local area, please do so. I posted the email address, and I'll post the phone number as well in the chat afterwards. And please get in touch, and we're really happy to chat through and hear more about your area. And also, yes, we've got 2 events coming up, one next week and one in a couple of weeks later around assets and legal bodies too. So some more formal training, or not formal training, but some more training and learning opportunities available in the early stage. So I'll post links to that too afterwards as well. But yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, thank you. Take care. I hope everybody has a lovely afternoon and manages to stay cool. Bye.